Robert Hayes sat in the darkness of his editing bay, replaying the footage from Oakwood Asylum for the 20th time. As the technical director, he had seen every kind of camera trick and special effect in his 15 years of filmmaking. But this was different. "Look at this again," he said, pointing to his screen. Emily Thompson, the production designer, leaned in closer. On the monitor, a strange burst of light pulsed through the frame, leaving trails that seemed to bend in impossible ways. "That's not lens flare," Emily said, pushing her glasses up. "And it's showing up on both the digital and film cameras." Robert nodded. "And here's the weird part. These light patterns matched the electromagnetic readings from Michael's meter." He pulled up another window showing graphs and numbers. No equipment malfunction could cause this. Emily opened her laptop and pulled up her research files. Over the past week, she had been digging through old production records, looking for similar incidents. "You need to see this," she said, turning the screen toward Robert. On the screen were scanned pages from production logs dating back to the 1970s. 3 different horror movies tried to film at Oakwood before us. All of them reported equipment problems. But look at these photographs. The old Polaroids showed the same strange light patterns they were seeing in their footage. But something else caught Robert's eye. "Wait, go back to that last one." Emily clicked back. The photo showed a film crew from 1977 standing in front of the same metal door Michael had found. In the center of the door was the same clean, shiny circle. "That's impossible," Robert said. "That door should be completely rusted over by now. It's been 48 years. The phone on the desk rang, making them both jump. It was Michael. "Rob, are you still at the studio?" Michael's voice was excited. "Get Emily and meet me at the old Carlton Theater downtown. Bring the footage. You're not going to believe what I found." 30 minutes later, they stood in the dusty projection room of the abandoned movie palace. Michael was already there, setting up an ancient film projector. "Watch this," he said, threading a reel of film. "The Carlton's owner found it in the basement. It's from 1952. The projector whirred to life, throwing black and white images onto the wall. It showed another film crew, their old cameras pointed at a different building. But the light patterns in the footage were identical to what they had captured at Oakwood. "That's not all," Michael said, pulling out a map. He had marked every location where similar phenomena had been reported during film productions. When connected, the marks formed a perfect geometric pattern across the city. Emily's research skills kicked in. Each of these locations had a history of paranormal activity before any filming happened there. But the incidents increased dramatically whenever a film crew showed up. Robert was already running calculations on his laptop. "The electromagnetic frequencies we recorded, they're not random. They're structured, like some kind of code or language." Michael pointed to the map. "And look at the dates. The incidents follow a pattern. They're getting more frequent, and they always happen when someone's trying to capture images or tell stories in these locations." The projection room grew colder. On the wall, the old footage continued playing, its strange lights dancing across their faces. None of them said what they were all thinking, that maybe these weren't just ghost stories or equipment malfunctions. Emily broke the silence. "So what do we do now?" Before Michael could answer, his phone lit up with a text message from an unknown number. The message contained just 4 words. "Not alone. Keep filming." In the darkness of the projection room, the 3 filmmakers looked at each other. They had started out making a horror movie. Now they were becoming part of a much bigger story, one that had been playing out on film for over 70 years. And somewhere, watching through the lens of every camera on their set, something was waiting to see what they would do next. Michael Anderson sat in his home editing room, his eyes burning from staring at screens all night. Empty coffee cups littered his desk. The rough cut of "Whispers in the Dark" played on one monitor, while strange light patterns from Oakwood Asylum filled another. His phone buzzed. An email from an address he didn't recognize. William.Foster@encrypted.net. The subject line made his heart skip. "I know what you saw." Michael almost deleted it as spam, but something made him click. A video file started playing. The footage was old, from the 1980s based on the quality. It showed acclaimed director William Foster on a night shoot in the desert. The same strange lights they had seen at Oakwood danced across the sky, but these lights moved with purpose, forming patterns that couldn't be natural. Foster's voice came through, aged but clear. If you're watching this, you've seen them too. The lights, the impossible readings, the cold spots. Everyone thinks they're ghosts. They're not. They're something much older, and they've been watching us since we first started telling stories with light and shadow. Michael's phone rang, making him jump. The caller ID showed unknown. "Hello," Michael answered cautiously. "Did you watch it?" It was William Foster himself, his voice matching the one in the video, but 40 years older. "Don't talk, just listen. Your phones aren't safe. Meet me at the Silent Picture Museum in 1 hour. Come alone." The museum was closed for renovations, but a side door opened when Michael approached. William Foster stood in the shadows, tall, white-haired, legendary. He had directed some of the biggest movies of the 1980s before mysteriously retiring at the height of his career. "They found me the same way," Foster said, leading Michael through dark halls filled with ancient movie cameras. "Strange lights in my footage, cold spots on set, equipment going crazy." He stopped at a display case containing one of the first motion picture cameras ever made. "But it goes back way further than cinema." Foster pulled out an old leather journal. Cave paintings, ancient temples, stained glass windows. Anywhere humans tried to capture stories with light and images, they were there, watching, learning. "They?" Michael asked. "Who are they?" "We don't have a word for them in any human language," Foster said. "They're not from Earth. They're not even from this dimension, really. They feed on creative energy, the kind that flows strongest when humans are making art, telling stories, capturing images." Michael thought about the pattern of incidents they had mapped, the geometric shape across the city. "Landing sites," Foster nodded, "or the closest thing to landing sites for beings that don't exactly land anywhere. They slip through when we open doors with our cameras and our imagination." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because they're getting ready for something bigger." Foster's hands shook as he opened his journal. "The incidents are increasing. More sightings, stronger readings. They're not just watching anymore. They're trying to communicate." Michael remembered the text message. "Not alone. Keep filming." "Your movie," Foster said, "the one you're shooting at Oakwood. It's not a coincidence you chose that location. They led you there. They've been guiding certain filmmakers to certain places for decades, building up to something." A cold breeze swept through the museum. The old cameras in their cases began to vibrate slightly. Foster grabbed Michael's arm. "Look at your footage closely. Not just the lights. Look at the shadows, the spaces between frames. They're leaving messages. A language made of light and dark. We just haven't learned to read it yet." As if on cue, every light in the museum flickered. When they steadied, Foster was already heading for the door. "Keep filming," he called back. "But be careful who you trust. Not everyone wants this story told." Michael stood alone in the museum, surrounded by the silent witnesses of cinema history. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a new text message. This time, it wasn't words but a pattern of dots and dashes, like Morse code, but unlike any code he had ever seen before. The real story, he realized, was just beginning. Michael couldn't sleep after his meeting with William Foster. At dawn, he drove to the studio, his mind racing with questions about the aliens and their messages. But when he arrived at his office, someone was already there. Diana Russell sat in his chair, looking exactly like the powerful director she was. Her silver hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes had the sharp look of someone who had seen too much to be easily surprised. "William told me about your conversation," she said, standing up. "We've been watching your work at Oakwood. It's time you met the others." Before Michael could respond, Robert and Emily burst into the office. "Mike, you need to see this." Robert stopped short when he saw Diana. "Oh, sorry. I didn't know you had company." Diana smiled. "Perfect timing. They should be here for this too." She pressed a button on her phone. "Send them up." Minutes later, 4 more people entered the office. Michael recognized them all. They were some of the most successful directors and cinematographers in Hollywood. Each one had made films that changed the industry. "Welcome to the coalition," Diana said. "We're a group of filmmakers who know the truth about our invisible audience. Each of us has our own story about how we discovered them." She walked to Michael's window and closed the blinds. A projector hummed to life, showing clips from different movies spanning 50 years. Michael recognized some of them. They were classics, films that had won awards and changed how movies were made. "Look carefully," Diana said. "What do you see?" Emily leaned forward. "The light patterns, they're the same as ours." "All of them?" "Exactly," Diana nodded. "We've been documenting these beings for decades. Each of us was chosen, just like you. They led us to specific locations, guided our cameras, influenced our stories." "But why?" Robert asked. "What do they want?" An older man stepped forward, Jack Thompson, famous for his science fiction films. "We think they're studying us. Human creativity fascinates them. They're drawn to it like moths to a flame." Every major breakthrough in film technology, Diana continued, every new way of telling stories with light and sound. They were there, watching, learning, sometimes helping. She pulled out a thick folder. Inside were photographs, letters and documents dating back to the earliest days of cinema. "Georges Méliès saw them first," she said, showing them a yellowed letter. "He thought they were stage tricks, magic he couldn't explain. Then Edison, then the Lumiere brothers. The beings were drawn to their experiments with moving pictures." Michael thought about his own footage from Oakwood. "The message I received after meeting Foster, it wasn't like any code I've seen." Diana's eyes lit up. "Show them," she said to Jack. Jack pulled out a laptop. On the screen was a complex pattern of light pulses, like the ones in Michael's footage but more structured. "We've been working on translating their language," Jack explained. "It's not just light and shadow. It's emotion, energy, creativity itself. They communicate through the act of creation. And now they're getting bolder," Diana added. "More direct. Something's changed. They want us to know they're here." Emily studied the pattern on Jack's laptop. "These sequences, they're like visual music, like they're trying to harmonize with our storytelling." "Exactly." Diana pointed to Emily. "That's exactly what we think. And your movie at Oakwood, it's perfect timing. They're ready for something bigger." Michael felt a chill. "What do you mean, bigger?" Diana looked at each person in the room. "We believe they're preparing for first contact. Real contact. Not just hints and shadows anymore. But they want to do it through our medium, through film." The projector flickered, though no one was near it. On the wall, shadows danced in patterns that shouldn't be possible. "They're here now," Diana said quietly. "They're always here when we talk about them. The question is, Michael, are you ready to help us tell their story?" The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the projector. In that moment, Michael realized that every film he'd ever made had been preparing him for this one. The basement of Diana Russell's Hollywood Hills home looked more like a science lab than a film studio. Screens covered the walls, each showing different light patterns recorded from movie sets around the world. Robert and Emily worked at computers, analyzing data, while Michael studied a map marking every known encounter. "Look at this," Robert said, pointing to his screen. "When we layer the electromagnetic readings from all the locations, they form a pattern. Not just in space, but in time too." Diana nodded. "The stronger the creative energy on set, the stronger their presence becomes. But there's more to it than that." She pressed a button, And all the screens changed to show scenes from different movies, all made by coalition members. In each one, the strange lights appeared during the most emotional moments. "They're not just watching us," Emily said, her eyes wide with understanding. "They're feeling what we feel, through our stories." "Exactly," Jack Thompson's voice came from the stairs as he entered the basement. "And now we know why." He placed an old film canister on the table. The label was faded, dated 1963. "Found this in the Library of Congress archives. It's from a classified government project." They threaded the film through a projector. The footage showed a different kind of light pattern, darker, more chaotic. The beings had appeared during a military test, but something was wrong. The energy readings were all wrong. They were dying, Jack explained. Their whole civilization was dying. Not physically. They don't have bodies like we do. They were dying creatively. Imagine a world without imagination, without stories, without dreams. Michael thought about his current film project. "So they came here because humans never stopped creating," Diana finished. "We tell stories, make art, dream up new worlds, even when things are at their worst. It's like food for them. They feed on our creative energy, but not in a harmful way. They experience it, learn from it, grow from it." Robert pulled up new data on his screen. "The readings we got at Oakwood, they were the strongest yet." "Why there? Why now?" Emily opened her research files. "I think I know. Oakwood wasn't just an asylum. In the 1930s, they had an art therapy program. Hundreds of patients telling their stories through painting, writing, music. A feast of creativity," Diana said. "The perfect place for them to try making contact." Suddenly, all the equipment in the basement came alive. Lights flickered, screens flashed, and in the center of the room, the air itself seemed to bend. A pattern of lights appeared, more complex than any they had seen before. It moved like a dance, telling a story without words. Everyone watched, transfixed. "They're showing us their world," Jack whispered. "What it was like before they lost their creative spark." The lights showed scenes of unimaginable beauty. Cities made of pure energy, beings of light sharing thoughts and dreams directly. Then darkness crept in, the patterns becoming simpler, duller, until almost nothing remained. "They didn't come here to take over," Michael said, understanding at last. "They came here to learn, to remember how to create again." Diana walked through the light pattern, her hand passing through colors that shouldn't exist. "Every story we tell, every film we make, helps them rebuild their own creativity. And in return, the pattern shifted, revealing technical diagrams, improvements to cameras and lighting that shouldn't have been possible in their time. Dreams and ideas that had pushed cinema forward. They'd been helping us too," Emily realized. Every major breakthrough in film technology was a gift. Jack nodded. "A thank you for helping them remember how to dream." The lights faded, leaving them in the dim basement, but now they understood. Every time they called action on a film set, they weren't just making a movie. They were helping an ancient race remember the power of imagination. And somewhere, in the spaces between light and shadow, that race was watching, learning, and slowly coming back to life. The editing room at Oakwood Asylum buzzed with activity at midnight. Michael sat with Robert at the main console, while Diana and Jack watched from behind. Emily paced the room, checking her notes. "Okay, let's try it again," Michael said. "Run the sequence." Robert pressed a button, and the scene they'd shot that morning played on the big screen. It showed Jessica walking down the asylum hallway, but now they had added special light patterns hidden in the shadows. Patterns they hoped the beings would understand. "We're mixing their visual language with ours," Robert explained, pointing to his computer, "using the old patterns we found in classic films as a base. It's like building a new alphabet." Emily stopped pacing. "But will they understand what we're trying to say?" As if in answer, the temperature in the room dropped. The editing equipment began to hum at a strange frequency. On every screen, including their phones, the same pattern appeared. 3 pulses of light, then darkness, then 2 more pulses. "They're counting with us," Diana said, her voice excited, showing us they understand numbers. Jack pulled out the notebook where they had been recording the beings' responses. "Try the emotional sequence next." Michael nodded to Robert, who loaded up a different scene. This one showed a powerful moment from the movie. Jessica's character discovering old patient artwork in the asylum's storage room. But hidden in the lighting were complex patterns designed to convey human feelings. The response was immediate. The lights in the room dimmed, and a beautiful display of colors filled the air. Unlike the chaos of their earlier manifestations, these patterns were clear and purposeful. "They're not just watching anymore," Michael said. "They're learning our film language. And we're learning theirs." Diana touched the wall where the colors danced. "In all my years making movies, I never imagined we'd be using film to talk with beings from another dimension." Robert typed quickly at his keyboard, making adjustments to their sequences. "We need to show this to the whole coalition. Every director can add their own patterns, their own way of communicating through their films. But we have to be careful," Jack warned. "If the wrong people find out what we're doing." Emily looked up from her notes. "Actually, I've been thinking about that. What if we hide the patterns in plain sight? Make them look like normal creative lighting choices." Michael snapped his fingers. "Like hidden messages in art. Viewers would just see a stylistic choice, but the beings would understand the real meaning." They worked through the night, crafting scenes that worked on 2 levels. One for human audiences, one for their watchers from beyond. Each new sequence brought faster and clearer responses from the beings. Around dawn, they tried their most complex message yet. On screen, they combined everything they had learned about the beings' visual language with the emotional power of human storytelling. The result was beyond anything they had imagined. The entire room filled with light and color. Equipment turned on and off by itself. In the air, patterns swirled and danced, telling stories they could almost understand. "It's working," Diana whispered. "They're not just responding. They're starting to share their own stories with us." Michael watched in awe as the light show continued. His horror movie about a haunted asylum had become something else entirely, a bridge between 2 species who love stories. "We need to share this with the others," he said finally. "Every coalition member needs to know what we've discovered. This is bigger than just one film now." The lights pulsed in agreement, forming a pattern they had seen before. "Not alone. Keep filming." But now they understood it wasn't just a message. It was an invitation to join in the greatest story ever told, one that would change both their worlds forever. The private screening room at United Studios was packed with coalition members. Michael stood at the front, ready to show them what his team had discovered. Behind him, the massive screen glowed with a soft blue light. "What you're about to see," he began, "is more than just a movie. It's our first real conversation with them." Diana dimmed the lights, and Robert started the film. On screen, scenes from Whispers in the Dark played, but now they were different. Every shadow, every beam of light carried hidden meanings. The patterns they had discovered were woven into every frame. In the darkness, something stirred. At first, it was just a flicker, like a faulty bulb. Then the air itself seemed to come alive with light. "Don't be afraid," Michael said to the gathered filmmakers. "They're answering us." The light formed shapes in the air, beautiful, impossible patterns that moved like liquid gold. But this time, the patterns were clearer than ever before. Images began to form, cities made of light, beings that looked like stars dancing through space, stories of a civilization that had forgotten how to dream. "They're showing us their history," Emily explained from her seat. "Everything we theorized was true. They lost their creativity, their spark, but through our movies, they're remembering." On screen, a scene played showing Jessica's character discovering old artwork in the asylum. As it did, the light beings responded with their own images, memories of their world when it was full of art and imagination. "Look at the emotional readings," Robert called out, pointing to his equipment. "The stronger the scene, the stronger their response. They're not just watching the movie, they're feeling it with us." The gathered directors watched in amazement as the exchange continued. Each scene from Michael's movie brought new responses, new stories from the light beings. It was like watching two different films playing at once, one on screen, one in the air around them. Then something unexpected happened. The light beings began creating their own scenes, using the air itself as their screen. They showed Earth as they had seen it through the years. The first cave paintings, the first photographs, the first movies. They had been there all along, watching humanity learn to tell stories with light and shadow. "They're not just learning from us," Jack realized. "They're teaching us too, showing us how they see our world." A young director in the back raised her hand. "But what do they want? Why show us all this now?" The lights swirled and formed new patterns. Diana, who had been studying their language the longest, translated. They say they want to create with us. Not just watch, not just learn, but work together. They want to help us tell stories in ways we never imagined possible." The room filled with excited whispers. One of the light beings moved closer to Michael, its glow gentle and warm. In his mind, he saw images of possibilities, movies that could touch all the senses, stories that could be experienced rather than just watched. "This is why they chose filmmakers," Michael said, understanding at last. "We already speak their language. The language of light and shadow, emotion and imagination. We just needed to learn how to talk to each other." The screening room had become a meeting place between two worlds. Human creativity had built a bridge, and now both sides were ready to cross it. The light beings swirled through the air, their patterns showing excitement, hope, and something else: gratitude. "So," Michael asked the room full of Earth's greatest storytellers, "who's ready to make movie history?" Every hand went up. Above them, the light beings pulsed with joy. The greatest collaboration in cinema history was about to begin, and not a single person in that room would ever see movies the same way again. The premiere of Whispers in the Dark wasn't held in a normal theater. Instead, Michael Anderson stood in the restored Grand Hall of Oakwood Asylum, watching as film industry executives, critics, and fellow coalition members filled the seats. Old asylum artwork hung on the walls, carefully restored and displayed. "Are you ready?" Jessica asked, standing beside him in an elegant black dress. She had kept their secret throughout the filming, playing her role perfectly both on and off camera. Michael touched the projector, feeling its gentle hum. "They're already here," he said quietly. "Can you feel it?" The air had that familiar electric quality, like the moment before lightning strikes. Diana and Jack sat in the front row, while Robert and Emily managed the technical equipment. Everyone who knew the truth waited with held breath. The lights dimmed, and the movie began. To most of the audience, it would look like a brilliantly crafted horror film about an asylum's dark past. But for those who knew what to look for, every scene held deeper meanings. In the darkness, the light beings arrived. They moved through the room like gentle waves, their patterns matching the hidden rhythms in the film. Some of the executives noticed the strange lights, but they simply smiled, assuming it was part of the show. On screen, the story unfolded. Jessica's character discovered not just the asylum's history, but the power of art to heal and transform. Each piece of patient artwork she found carried secret messages, the same patterns they had used to communicate with the beings. During the most powerful scene, where hundreds of restored patient artworks were revealed in the asylum's hidden gallery, the light beings put on a show of their own. The air filled with colors no human eye had seen before. Emotions flowed through the room like music. Critics wiped tears from their eyes, not knowing that what they felt wasn't just the film's story, but the joy of the light beings themselves, creatures who had rediscovered their own creativity through human art. When the final credits rolled, The audience stood and cheered. Reviews would later call it revolutionary, a new language of cinema, unlike anything ever filmed before. They had no idea how right they were. After the crowd left, the coalition members gathered in the asylum's art gallery. The light beings stayed, their patterns now clear and strong. "Look at this," Emily said, checking her instruments. "Their energy readings, they're different now. More stable. More alive." Diana finished. "They're not just feeding on creativity anymore. They're making their own." Michael watched as the beings danced through the gallery, adding their own light patterns to the artwork on the walls. Where once they had been desperate to consume human creativity, now they were eager to share their own. "We'll need to be careful," Jack said. "Keep the full truth hidden in our films. Let people think it's just clever effects and innovative filming." Robert nodded at his computer screen. "Already got 5 other studios asking about our new lighting technology. If they only knew." The light beams swirled faster, forming the pattern they now all recognized as laughter. One of them approached Michael, sharing a vision of more movies, more collaborations, more stories waiting to be told. "So what's next?" Jessica asked, watching the lights dance. Michael smiled. "Now we make more movies, tell more stories, but not just for human audiences anymore." He looked around at his fellow coalition members. "We're not just filmmakers now. We're ambassadors between worlds." Diana raised a glass to the future of cinema. The light beings joined in their own way, filling the room with a display that made the northern lights look dim. As Michael watched them dance, he knew that every movie from now on would carry a piece of their story, hidden in plain sight, waiting for those who knew how to see it. And somewhere in the darkness of every theater, in the spaces between frames, their new friends would be watching, learning, and adding their own light to humanity's greatest gift, the power to tell stories that change worlds.